Right now, tens of millions of people are taking Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro, and almost every single one of them is focused on the same thing, the number on the scale going down. But while that number is dropping, something else is happening inside their bodies that almost nobody is talking about. Their gut bacteria, the trillions of microorganisms that regulate their immune system, their mood, their inflammation levels, and even how well the drug itself keeps working, are being fundamentally restructured. A major systematic review published just this year analyzed 38 separate studies on exactly this question. And what the researchers found is more complicated than anyone expected. Some of it is genuinely good news, but some of it is a warning. Because if you're on one of these drugs and eating the wrong way, you may be silently dismantling the very biological system that makes the medication work long-term. This is what GLP-1 drugs are really doing to your gut. Before we go any further, this is not medical advice. If you're currently on any medication or thinking about starting one, please talk to your doctor before making any changes. What I want to do here is translate the research into plain language, the kind of information that rarely makes it into a 10-minute GP appointment. The study underpinning this video is a peer-reviewed systematic review published in a leading nutrition journal in April 2026. It synthesized findings from 38 studies examining how GLP-1 receptor agonists, the drug class that includes semaglutide and tirzepatide, interact with and reshape the gut microbiome. What it found challenges the way most people think about these medications. Because GLP-1 drugs don't just tell your brain you're full, they reach all the way down into your intestine and start rearranging the ecosystem that lives there. Let's make sure we're on the same page about what the gut microbiome actually is, because it's far more than a wellness buzzword. Your gut contains roughly 38 trillion microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, archaea. This ecosystem functions like a secondary organ. It produces vitamins, regulates your immune system, communicates directly with your brain through the vagus nerve, and determines how much energy your body extracts from the food you eat. When this ecosystem is diverse and balanced, it is actively working in your favor. When it becomes disrupted, when species are lost and diversity collapses, it is one of the most consistent markers in modern medicine for poor long-term metabolic health. Scientists increasingly talk about microbial diversity, the way cardiologists talk about blood pressure. It's a number that tells you something important about your future, not just your present. So when a drug as powerful as semaglutide reaches into that ecosystem and starts making structural changes, the question can't just be how much weight comes off. The question has to be, what kind of microbiome are you left with once it does? Here's where the genuinely encouraging news begins. Across almost every GLP-1 drug examined in the review, liraglutide, semaglutide, dulaglutide, researchers found one consistent pattern. A specific species of gut bacteria was significantly and reliably increasing. It is called Akkermansia muciniphila. Akkermansia lives in the mucus layer that lines the inside of your intestine. Its primary function is to reinforce that lining, to maintain the integrity of the barrier between your gut contents and your bloodstream, and this matters enormously. When that barrier is compromised, a state researchers call intestinal permeability, bacterial toxins known as lipopolysaccharides can seep into the bloodstream. Once circulating, the immune system treats them as a threat and mounts a response. The result is low-grade, chronic, systemic inflammation. That kind of inflammation is closely associated with insulin resistance, persistent fatigue, cognitive fog, and the type of metabolic stagnation that makes weight loss feel impossible, regardless of what you eat. So the finding that GLP-1 drugs are consistently raising Akkermansia levels is meaningful. It suggests these medications may be doing something beyond appetite suppression. They may be actively supporting part of the gut architecture that underlies metabolic health in the first place. But here's where it gets significantly more complicated. The same systematic review that identified those Akkermansia increases also flagged something that every person on a GLP-1 drug should understand. In studies focused on semaglutide specifically, the active compound in both Ozempic and Wegovy, researchers observed a notable reduction in overall microbial diversity. Yes, Akkermansia goes up, but a broader range of other bacterial species go down, and in the gut, diversity is not just a nice feature. It is the foundation of resilience. A microbiome with hundreds of thriving and distinct species can absorb dietary changes, fight off opportunistic bacteria, and maintain metabolic stability. A microbiome with collapsing diversity, even if it has Akkermansia doing solid work, becomes fragile. It loses its redundancy, and critically, it loses the range of species responsible for producing short-chain fatty acids. The compounds that feed your gut lining, regulate inflammation, and send satiety signals to your brain. When diversity drops, those signals weaken, And the mechanism behind that diversity loss comes down almost entirely to what the person on the medication is eating. What the research actually shows is that the drug and the diet are inseparable. One without the other creates a lopsided microbiome, capable of one thing fragile against everything else. One of the things GLP-1 drugs do very effectively is suppress appetite. People on semaglutide often describe simply forgetting to eat or feeling full after just a few bites. And on the surface, this sounds ideal. Fewer calories consumed, weight loss follows, but here's where the problem quietly develops. When people on these medications do eat, when they finally feel hungry enough to put something in their body, they tend to reach for the path of least resistance. Soft, processed, easy-to-eat foods, white bread, crackers, ready meals, refined carbohydrates that go down without triggering the nausea that higher doses of these drugs can cause. Researchers now have a name for this pattern, the beige diet, and from a microbiome standpoint, it is deeply problematic. The beneficial bacteria that maintain your gut's diversity, species like Bifidobacterium, Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, and Roseburia, they do not feed on your food directly. They feed on the fermentable fiber that your food leaves behind in the colon. No fiber, no fuel. When those populations decline through lack of substrate, you lose the bacteria that produce butyrate, the primary energy source for the cells that line your large intestine. Butyrate production drops, the gut wall weakens, and the barrier work that Akkermansia is doing gets undermined from the inside. The very protection the drug was helping build quietly starts to erode, and researchers point to this exact pattern, high Akkermansia, low overall diversity, poor diet quality, as one of the leading explanations for why a significant number of people regain weight rapidly after stopping GLP-1 therapy, the drug goes. The microbiome isn't resilient enough to hold the metabolic gains. The weight comes back. Stay with me, because this next part is where it becomes genuinely actionable. Based on what the research shows, there are 3 practical strategies that matter most for anyone on a GLP-1 medication who wants to protect their gut health alongside their weight loss. The first is gradual fiber titration. And the word gradual is doing a lot of work there, because if you're on a GLP-1 drug and you suddenly increase your fiber intake significantly, you will likely feel terrible. These medications already slow down digestion considerably. Adding a large fiber load on top of a sluggish gut causes the kind of bloating and discomfort that many people mistake for a side effect of the medication itself. The research-backed approach is to increase fiber slowly, roughly 3 to 5 grams per week, working toward a daily target of 25 to 35 grams. Focus particularly on soluble fibers. Oats, beans, lentils, chia seeds, these ferment gently and are far easier to tolerate than rougher insoluble fibers when your gut is already working at a slower pace. And stay hydrated. Fiber absorbs water, and GLP-1 users frequently have blunted thirst signals, which means dehydration can compound the constipation problem significantly if you're not consciously keeping fluids up. The second is targeted probiotic support. This is not about grabbing a generic multi-strain supplement from a supermarket shelf. The research points to specific studied strains for the specific problems that GLP-1 users most commonly face. For slowed transit and constipation among the most common complaints, a strain called Bifidobacterium lactis HN019 has clinical evidence for measurably reducing whole gut transit time. For bloating specifically, Bifidobacterium lactis bio07 has been studied and shown meaningful reductions in that pressure-like sensation in clinical trials. For bowel unpredictability, the pattern where things swing between too slow and too fast, Saccharomyces boulardii is a well-documented yeast-based probiotic that consistently appears in the research on gut stabilization during periods of microbiome disruption. These are the strains that appear most reliably in the evidence for GLP-1 adjacent gut symptoms, and they are worth discussing with your doctor or pharmacist. The third is deliberate protein prioritization. One of the most underreported consequences of GLP-1 therapy is lean muscle loss. When total food intake drops dramatically and the body is shedding weight quickly, research indicates that a significant portion of that weight can come from muscle rather than fat alone. This matters because less muscle means a lower resting metabolic rate, which means maintaining weight without the drug becomes significantly harder over time. Researchers recommend aiming for approximately 1.2 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, spread across several small meals rather than 1 or 2 large ones. From a microbiome perspective, the key is pairing that protein with diverse plant foods. The goal is the combination, adequate protein, diverse plant fiber, steady hydration. That is the nutritional environment in which a resilient microbiome can hold together through the metabolic changes these drugs create. The bottom line is this: GLP-1 medications are genuinely powerful, and the Akkermansia findings give real reason for optimism about what they may be doing well beyond the scale. But these drugs are reshaping your gut microbiome in ways that the weight loss conversation almost never mentions. Whether that reshaping leaves you more metabolically resilient long-term or quietly sets you up for rebound, comes down largely to what you're feeding your gut bacteria while the medication is doing its work. The gut does not ask for much. Diversity, fiber, consistency, give it those things, and it becomes one of the most powerful allies your long-term health has. If this kind of research is useful to you, subscribe. We cover exactly this depth every week. And coming up next, the specific foods that research now links to Akkermansia growth, and a few of them will genuinely surprise you.